Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my July reading wrap up. Overall, July was a fairly good month. I ended up reading 10 books. I DNF'd one book. I did Summerween during July. Summerween ran for a week from July 7th through the 14th. There were a total of 5 prompts for Summerween. I read 5 books during that week. And yeah, overall it was a pretty good month. My average is usually anywhere from 10 to 15 books a month. So I was on the lower scale for the month, but you know, I'm still ahead in my Goodreads challenge. I'm like 19 books ahead, so I will take it. I haven't really had any reading slumps, knock on wood. So yeah, it was overall a good month. There were some books that I liked more than others, some that I just kind of pushed through that I wasn't really feeling. I had some rereads that I love, that I read every year around this time of year. So yeah, overall it was a good month. I do have my reading planner from Owl Crate where I keep track of all the books I read every month. So I'm going to be referring back to this for my ratings and notes and all of that. So of the books I read, 4 were audiobooks, 4 were ebooks, and 2 were physical books. I'm going to go ahead and start off with the physical books because not only do I obviously have them here with me, but they are actually part of a series. I talked about these in my vlogs. I talked about them in my Summerween vlog, which I will link a card above, as well as this past week's weekly vlog, so I'll link to that as well. So the books I read, the 2 physical books I read were Blood Brothers and The Hollow. These are part of the Sign of Seven trilogy from Nora Roberts. This series is pretty old. I think it's like 14 or 15 years old. But I love this series so much. I read it every year. This is probably my 6th or 7th time, at least, reading this series. I love it. I love the found family aspects. I love the dynamics between the characters. I love the banter between the characters. I like that it is a good balance between romance and like the supernatural, paranormal elements of the books. It does have the insta-love trope. These characters fall for each other pretty quickly, which I don't usually like, but I do like. So I have this weird thing where I don't love like insta-love like tropes in books, but I do like when it's like a fated mate type of situation. So whether it's like an ACOTAR situation where they end up being mates and they were, you know, meant to end up mated the whole time, or whether it's like a fate brought them together, or they were fated to be together type thing, that I don't mind. I don't like it more when it's just like a love at first sight or like insta lust and they confuse that for love type situation. That I don't like, especially when it's in the dynamic of like a love triangle. They're like fated to, so there's 3 men and 3 women. They come together to fight the evil thing that's happening in these books, and they all pair off into couples, and it was fated to happen this way. The 3 men are from like the good side of the whole paranormal thing. The 3 women are from the bad side, and they're meant to come together to fight this thing. And it's been fated. It was like prophesized that they would come together and that they would match up and be able to fight this thing. That I like. I know some people don't like that because it doesn't leave room for like choice or consent or like any, like for the characters to make any decisions on their own. And this does have that a little bit, but the characters do, at least some of the characters do kind of try to fight it, which I enjoy. But yeah, I like the way these are done. I like the balance between the paranormal and the romance. There is a 3rd book. I forget what it's called, but I haven't gotten to it yet. I don't have the physical copy of the 3rd one. I have to get through the library. But I do eventually need to get see if there's different versions of these or newer versions, or just see if I can find the 3rd one somewhere. But yeah, I read those, gave them 5 stars. I love those. I talk a little bit more in depth about them I talk a little bit more in depth about those in those previous videos that I talked about. So those are the 2 physical books that I read. Then the other books that I read. So the last book I finished in July was What Moves the Dead by Kingfisher. I really liked this. I listened to the audiobook. It was quick. I think the audiobook was like 8 hours long, maybe, if that. This book like quickly drew me in. I listened to it while I was working. And it kept distracting me from my work. So a lot of people will say that they can't listen to audiobooks while they work because their work is distracting them and they don't fully pay attention to the audiobook. For me, it was the opposite. I was listening to the book and it kept like drawing my attention away from my work because I was paying attention to what was happening in the book. And I want to say I saw that this might be part of a series. I'm pretty sure I saw that on Goodreads. I'll link all these books down below so you can see if that's true or not. Maybe I'm wrong and I'm thinking of something else. But I really enjoyed this. This is about the main character is called to this manor house that is on this property by like a huge lake. And they are called here because their childhood friends are ill, or the woman is ill and she's dying. And when they arrive, they realize that not only is she sick and dying, but so is her brother, the one who called the main character to this manor house. And they have a doctor there with them who's taking care of them, but there are a lot of strange things happening in and around the house. And it's basically trying to figure out what is going on and what is causing them to be sick. And horror light, maybe. There's a little bit of like body horror, but nothing too like gross or overly descriptive, I guess. For me, this was more about like the setting. I love any story that's set in like a dilapidated, like uncared for home. Anytime these types of big like English like manors are described, I always think of like the house from The Secret Garden, like the movie from the 90s. I always think of that type of like sprawling big manor. And so this book was more about the setting for me. It was really descriptive. It was written really well. Like I said, there's a little bit of like body horror, but nothing too like gross or off-putting. I liked the pacing of it. It kept you engaged. You were never really sure what was happening until like the end when everything was explained, and it was explained well. It wasn't, I hate when books like at the very end are just tied up together perfectly and explained away quickly. The characters had to like work to find the answer to what was happening, and I enjoyed that. So I ended up giving this 4 stars. Then the next book I read was The Claiming of Sleeping Beauty by Anne Rice. Anne Rice wrote this book under like a pen name or a different name. I didn't write down what the other name was, but like I said, I'll have it linked down below. I have always loved Anne Rice's books. Interview with the Vampire, all of those books. I used to read those in high school all the time. I didn't know about this series of books. I guess she wrote a series of like fairy tale retellings, but they are eroticas basically. They are very smutty. And this one, when I started it, I had high hopes for it. But I think for someone who reads a lot of romance books, a lot of smutty type books, I think this kind of went a little bit too far for me. I didn't love it. I think the problem was that, so this is about Sleeping Beauty, and the prince who awakens her from her sleep after she touches the needle of the spinning wheel. She's been asleep for like 10 years, I think, or maybe 100 years, I don't remember. And the prince comes and wakes her up, and in waking her up, wakes up her whole kingdom that has also been asleep. But the way he wakes her up is by having sex with her while she's asleep. So obviously there's no type of consent. Finds her and starts touching her and undresses her and has sex with her while she's still unconscious. And she wakes up to him having sex with her, basically. And he then claims her. And even though her parents are like king and queen in their own right, because he was the one who awoken her and awoken the kingdom, he kind of treats them like shit and claims her and says that he's taking her and they don't have a choice in the matter. And he brings her to his kingdom where it's basically like a giant sex club, their kingdom, and they have sex slaves and all of these like crazy erotic things are happening all over the place. And I think what I didn't like about it was the elements of, one, like the non-consent elements, because she basically has no choice in anything that happens from the moment she wakes up. And also there was a lot of like shaming and moments of like embarrassment and like public humiliation. And that is just not my thing. That's not something that I enjoy. I feel like secondhand like embarrassment very easily. And I've never enjoyed books that have to do with like bullying in that way, or deal with like public shame, public embarrassment, elements like that. So it ended up bothering me more than like I enjoyed it. It took me out every time it would happen. It took me out of the story, and the parts that I did enjoy ended up not mattering because I was so uncomfortable with the other things that were happening. So yeah, I ended up not loving this. I gave it 2 stars. I don't think that I will continue on in the series. If I want to read something funny, there are plenty of other options. This just wasn't it for me. The writing wasn't bad. The general story, I think some things could have been changed, but it wasn't horrible. I couldn't get past all the different times that she was like publicly humiliated, and it basically just turned on everybody around her while she was embarrassed and humiliated in front of the whole kingdom. So couldn't get past it. I gave it 2 stars. Yeah. So the next book that I read was Notes on an Execution. I listened to an audiobook of this. I'd heard a lot of people talking about it. I enjoyed it. I liked it because I like true crime, mystery type books. This kind of involved a little bit of everything. It was a little bit of true crime about a serial killer. It was a little bit of a mystery thriller, trying to figure out. It wasn't about finding out who had done the killings. We knew from the beginning who had done the killings, but why he had done them, and you get into his head and kind of see things from his perspective, and you get to see the killer's upbringing and childhood, and so you get to understand a little bit of why he would have felt the way he did, a little bit of why he eventually became a serial killer, why he held this grudge against women, and eventually killed them. So this is a story about a man, I can't think of his name now, but he is a serial killer. He's currently on death row, about to be executed, and the story basically jumps between the perspective of 3 different women. I think it's 3 women. I'm pretty sure it's 3 women. Who have known him at different points in his life. So one is his mother, and that's where we get to see like his childhood, his upbringing, and kind of what led him to be in the mental state where he could kill these women. So his mother, a girl he grew up with in like foster care, in like in a group home, and their experiences together, and you get to see like the beginning of his like psychosis, and the beginning of his story where he's starting to have those like psychotic tendencies. They always say it starts off with like harming animals, and you see some of that. So there is some animal harm in this. I loved that girl who he bullied at that time ended up becoming a cop and a lead detective and a captain eventually, and she's the one who arrests him and gets him to. I loved that part of it, and then you get the perspective of another woman who has been in his life. I really liked it. Like I said, it has all the aspects and all the things that I like. A little bit of mystery and thriller, serial killer, true crime vibes. It was good, but there wasn't anything about it that like wowed me. It was just good. So that was that one. Then the next book I have is Claimed by the Horde King by Zoey Draven. This is the second book in this series. I enjoyed this series. I talked about this in my alien romance reading vlog, which I'll link. So each of the books kind of have the same premise. So on this planet, there is a group of, or like a society of nomadic, there's a species of these nomads who travel around this, this planet, and they have their own like society, their own hierarchy. They have a capital city where they're, he's not called a king, but like their leader lives, and then all of the other tribes are spread out around the world, and they're nomadic, and they travel, depending on the seasons and all that. And they are based off of the Dothraki from Game of Thrones, which I really like. I talked about that in that alien reading vlog. So this is the second book in the series. I liked this one. I didn't like it quite as much as the first one, but it was good. I think there's like 10 or 11 books in this series, so I don't know how quickly I'll get through all of them. But I liked it. It was 3 stars. And they're fairly quick reads, so I would definitely give them a chance. I think if you like Ice Planet Barbarians, then the next book I read was Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. I really enjoyed this. This is basically like the Titanic, but set in space. This team of like, I don't know if they're really like scavengers or explorers. This is set in the future, but this team who are exploring like deep space through a series of events come to find a ship that has been missing for like 20 years. It was a luxury liner spaceship, and it disappeared off the radar 20 years before, and nobody ever knew what happened to it. It's space, obviously, so it's huge, and there's no like tracking on the ship. Like everything on the ship went dead, so they can't track it, they can't find it, there's no communications, nothing. They don't know, nobody from the ship has ever been found, so they don't know what happened. This team happens to find the ship out in like the deep recesses of space, and they realize that something terrible has happened on the ship. And it goes from there. I really liked this. I loved the idea of like the Titanic, of this like tragedy happening on the ship, and the descriptions of the spaceship sound like the Titanic. It basically sounds like they took a luxury cruise liner and stuck it in space, and turned it into like a spaceship basically. And the descriptions once they were on the ship were really good. You really felt like you were there. The descriptions of what happened to the people were really good. I liked everything about this except for the end reveal. When you finally get the reveal of what happened to the ship, I didn't love it. Like, I get it. It makes sense. I don't want to spoil it, and it's very true to like reality and like human nature and our society and human beings, and something like, it's not very far-fetched for what happened and why it happened. But I felt like I like when books start off, if they start off paranormal or whatever, the explanation for what's happening is a paranormal reason. I hate when it then ends up being like man-made, or it ends up being a human error, or it actually ends up being people, like a person who's doing these things and it's not actually supernatural. I hate when books do that. So that I didn't like, which is why I ended up only giving this 3 stars. Had it actually been like the reason for what happened, or the reason why this ended up being this ghost ship floating in space, had it been an actual paranormal reason, this could have been a 4-star. But that like last 10% of the book after they do the reveal just kind of killed it for me. So yeah, that is that one. Then I read Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman. This was one of my summer reads. I really enjoyed this. I gave it 3 stars. I think the problem is that I grew up with the movie with Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman, and I love that movie. I've watched it, I can't even tell you how many times. It's been a few years since I've seen it, but when I was younger, I used to watch it all the time. And for me, when I see a movie, especially a movie like that I've seen so many times, that I'm so familiar with, and is so like nostalgic for me, when I read the book never measures up. I'm so used to the way the movie is and the order that things happen in the movie, and there's always extra things in the movie because they need to like dramatize it and make it fit the movie screen and fit the narrative of the movie they're trying to make. So the movie is always a little bit different. So in this case, I was so used to the series of events that happened in the movie, the things that were different from the book to the movie. I just didn't enjoy it as much. It was good. I liked it. It was definitely like nostalgic and very reminiscent of the movie. I just didn't fully enjoy it because I do love the movie so much compared to the narrative that I got in the book. Okay, so the next book I read was The Only One Left by Riley Sager. This was one of my most anticipated reads of the year, and I really liked it. I feel like this book's getting mixed reviews, but I liked it. I listened to the audiobook of it. It kept me guessing the whole way through. I don't want to spoil it, but it kept me guessing the whole way through, like Riley Sager's books always do. I loved the setting of, again, like dilapidated, falling apart house that is isolated and like not easily accessible, and the people who are in the house in the story are like all not trapped but kind of stuck in this house because they're so like far removed from town or a city or from like the rest of society. This has like Lizzie Borden vibes. It kept me guessing the whole way through. I always had, like, I had my theories throughout, but I was never really fully sure what the explanation was for what had happened, and what the reveal was going to be. When the reveal came, again, I hadn't expected it, but it was, again, that same thing where, like, it tries to be paranormal and it ends up not being paranormal. So that's what kept it from being a 5-star for me. I did give it 4 stars, mainly for, like, the setting, the descriptions of the house, the way the house was literally on a cliff that was crumbling into the sea, and the house was literally falling apart around them. I loved that part of it. The storyline was a 4, not a 5, which is why I rated the book the way I did. Then next, for the prompt of graphic novel for Summerween, I read Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell. I really liked this. It was super cute. The art style was beautiful. The colors were beautiful. I love a like friends to lovers romance. This was set in a pumpkin patch, which I love. It definitely put me in the Summerween like mood. It put me in the fall mood. I live in Las Vegas, so we don't really get those like big pumpkin patches with hay rides and like corn mazes and all that kind of stuff. We obviously don't get that kind of stuff living in the desert. We have pumpkin patches, but it's basically like they're usually in parking lots, and they lay down some hay, and they sell pumpkins, and they have a few like bounce houses, and that's it. This is like a huge sprawling pumpkin patch with, like I said, hay rides, corn mazes, carnival games, all kinds of different food booths. It was basically like a giant fair, like county fair, which I love. I love carnivals. I love fairs. That's like one of my favorite things. I wouldn't really get that in Vegas. So I love getting to be in that setting. And like I said, the art style was beautiful, and I really liked the story, and it just really put me in the fall mood. So I really enjoyed this one. Okay, then the last book is going to be the DNF for the month. This is Love Theoretically by Hazelwood. I originally started reading this. I actually got an arc of this. But I didn't start reading it until after the book had already come out. I did last year a whole vlog on Love on the Brain. Or not a vlog. It ended up being like a rant video, basically, which I'll tag also. I started to film a reading vlog for Love Theoretically. I had a feeling I wasn't going to like it because I haven't liked the last 2 Hazelwood books that I read. But I wanted to give it a chance. I figured I'll keep trying. Maybe she'll write something that I like. I really did not like Love on the Brain. So originally, at first, I thought that maybe this one would be one that maybe I would end up not loving, but liking, not hating, like I hated Love on the Brain. To me, this basically was like the premise of While You're Sleeping, the movie with Sandra Bullock. A woman who is pretending to date one man ends up falling for her brother, and the brother like outs her and finds out the truth. Basically the premise of this book, which is the same premise as that movie, which I love that movie. But I could not get into it. I think the problem with these books for me is that they're basically just like one long internal monologue from the main female characters. POV, like you're just in her head and you're just getting a constant stream of her thoughts, and it's just one long, like I said, inner monologue, and just her rambling to herself the entire book. And I don't like that. I've noticed that I don't like books that are written that way. And I find these characters, Ali Hazelwood's characters, to be so self-absorbed, so sure in their, like, especially Live on the Brain. That character was so sure that the male character, like, despised her. And it's the same thing in this. Like, I forget the main character's name, but she's so sure that the brother despises her and that he's this evil person who did this horrible thing within their scientific community. And that even when there's science to the contrary, she, like, refuses to believe it because she's so, like, sure of her, that she's right. And this character was very much, like, a huge people pleaser, and had this whole system of altering herself and her whole personality to each person that she's dealing with. And it was just exhausting listening to her, like, constantly change herself to fit what she thought everybody else wanted her to be. And I got through like 20% of it, and I just knew that I wasn't gonna like it, and I was forcing myself to read it. I didn't finish the reading vlog that I was doing, obviously, because I ended up DNFing the book. And yeah, I was having to force myself to read it, and I could feel myself going into a slump, and I didn't want to go into a reading slump because of a book that I knew I wasn't gonna like. I didn't want to force myself to, like, hate read this book, basically, and end up in a reading slump. So I got 20% in. I knew I wasn't gonna like it, and so I just DNF'd it. I know a lot of people really like Ali Hazelwood's books. More power to you. You know, we're all entitled to our opinions, but they are just obviously not for me. So, yeah, that is it. So those are all the books that I read in July. So the one thing that I haven't mentioned is my TBR. I did a different style TBR video for July, where I made a list of all the books on my shelves, all my unread books, and I used like a random, like, name generator basically to pick which books I was going to be reading. Still didn't read any of those books on that TBR. I read a couple of physical books, just not ones that I hadn't read. They are not unread books on my shelves. Those were rereads. So I did not get to any of those books. That completely straight off of my TBR again, which is basically what I do every month. But I'm going to keep doing it, keep pushing forward. Who knows, maybe eventually one of these days I'll actually pick up one of these books that I have not read on these shelves. But yeah, that is basically it for this video. Thank you for following along. I'm excited. Hopefully August will be just as good of a reading month, if not better. I will be filming my August TBR the same way I did, so hopefully I will get to some of those. There are some new releases coming out in August that I'm really excited about, but I will talk about those in that video. So thank you for watching. Let me know down below if you've read any of these. What did you think of them? What did you think of Love Theoretically? Are you a Ali Hazelwood fan? Or do you feel the same way I do? Let me know down below, and I will see you guys in the next video.